The deep space void stretched endlessly in all directions, cold and silent. Nothing moved here except the occasional drift of cosmic dust and the slow rotation of distant stars. This forgotten corner of the galaxy had seen no visitors for centuries, no signs of life or civilization. It was the perfect place to hide something or to lose it forever. Dr. Vextar adjusted his scanner for the third time that morning, his four eyes focusing on the readings that made no sense. The lead scientist of the Kepler Consortium had spent his entire life studying dead civilizations and lost technologies. He knew what empty space looked like on his instruments. This was not empty space. "Sir, I'm getting the same readings," said his assistant Colwyn from across the bridge of their research vessel. "There's definitely something out there, something big." The Wisdom Seeker was the most advanced archaeological ship in the Kepler fleet. Its sensors could detect the smallest piece of metal floating in space, could analyze the chemical composition of a rock from 1,000 kilometers away, and could peer through the hull of a derelict ship to see what lay inside. Right now, those sensors were telling Dr. Vextar that there was a massive object ahead of them, but his eyes saw nothing but stars. "Bring us closer," Dr. Vextar ordered. "Slowly. If there's something there using stealth technology, I don't want to surprise it." The ship moved forward at a careful pace. Dr. Vextar had discovered 17 dead civilizations in his career. He had learned to be cautious. Dead civilizations sometimes left behind dangerous things, automated defense systems that still worked after thousands of years, weapons that activated when approached, diseases that could kill entire worlds. The galaxy was full of graves, and some of those graves had teeth. As they drew nearer, the object began to appear on their visual screens. At first, it was just a shadow against the stars, a darkness where light should be. Then details began to emerge. It was enormous, easily 3 kilometers long and half a kilometer wide. The shape was wrong, too angular and aggressive compared to the flowing designs that most civilizations preferred for their ships. "By the 7 moons," whispered Colwyn. "Look at the hull." Dr. Vextar looked. The ship's surface was covered in scars, not the gentle wear of time and space dust, but the violent marks of weapons fire. Massive gouges ran along the sides where energy beams had cut deep into the metal. Crater-like holes showed where projectile weapons had punched through armor, plating. This ship had been in a battle, and from the look of it, a very long and very brutal one. "Are there any life signs?" Dr. Vextar asked. His science officer, Dr. Zinara, worked at her station with quick, precise movements. She was the best xenobiologist in the consortium, able to identify new forms of life from the smallest traces. Her readings would tell them if this was a tomb or something more interesting. "I'm detecting power signatures," she said, her voice tight with excitement. "Minimal but steady. Something on that ship is still working after all this time. Answer. I'm reading life signs. Lots of them." Dr. Vextar felt his heart begin to beat faster. A functioning ship with living beings inside was the find of a lifetime. But something about this vessel made him nervous. The aggressive design, the battle damage, the fact that it had been hidden out here in the middle of nowhere. This felt like the kind of discovery that changed everything, and not always for the better. "How many life signs?" he asked. "Exactly. 1,000, Dr. Zinara replied. "They're all in some kind of suspended animation. Body temperatures are far below normal for any known species, but their vital signs are stable. They've been asleep for a very long time." The bridge fell silent as everyone considered this information. 1,000 beings in suspended animation on a battle-damaged ship hidden in deep space. It was like something out of an old adventure story. Too dramatic to be real. But the sensors didn't lie. "Can you identify the species?" Dr. Vextar asked. Dr. Zinara worked for several minutes, running the readings through every database the consortium had compiled over the centuries. Finally, she looked up with confusion clear on her face. "The biological readings don't match any known species in our records. The body structure is bipedal, roughly 2 meters tall on average, with what appears to be an internal skeleton. But sir, there's something else. The ship's computer core is still active, and I'm picking up data streams. The language is familiar, somehow. Dr. Vextar moved to her station and looked at the symbols appearing on her screen. They were simple, angular marks that seemed almost primitive compared to the flowing scripts used by most galactic civilizations. But there was something about them that tugged at his memory. "Run a comparison against historical databases," he ordered. "Go back as far as our records allow." While Dr. Zinara worked, Dr. Vextar studied the ship through the main viewer. The more he looked at it, the more wrong it seemed. The proportions were harsh and utilitarian, designed for function rather than beauty. Every line spoke of violence and war. This was not a ship built for exploration or trade. This was a warship, and a very advanced one, despite its crude appearance. "Sir," Dr. Zinara said suddenly, her voice filled with shock. "I found a match, but it can't be right." "Show me." The main screen changed to display ancient records from the deepest archives of the Galactic Historical Society. The symbols on the mystery ship were identical to those in records that were over 800 years old. Records that most scholars believed were myths or exaggerations. "These are human symbols," Dr. Zinara said quietly. "This is a human ship." The bridge erupted in excited chatter. Humans were legend, a species that had appeared in galactic records for barely 2 centuries before vanishing completely. They had been traders, explorers, sometimes warriors, but always mysterious. No one knew where they had come from or where they had gone. Most species considered them to be stories, tales, told by traders to make their journeys seem more interesting. But here was proof. A human ship, still functional after all these centuries, carrying 1,000 humans in some kind of sleep that had preserved them perfectly. It was the archaeological find of the century, possibly of all time. "We need to get that ship to a proper research facility," Dr. Vextar said. "Contact Kepler Prime immediately. Tell them we're bringing in something special." As the Wisdom Seeker began the delicate process of taking the human ship in tow, Dr. Vextar couldn't shake his feeling of unease. The battle damage on the hull was extensive, but it wasn't random. Someone had fought this ship with everything they had, and the ship had survived. That suggested weapons and defensive systems far beyond what the historical records indicated humans possessed. The power source was another mystery. The ship's fusion reactor was still running after 8 centuries, providing power to the life support systems that kept the 1,000 humans alive. Current galactic science said such a reactor design was impossible. The fuel consumption should have exhausted the ship's reserves within a few decades at most. Yet here it was, running steadily and efficiently. Dr. Zinara continued her scans of the sleeping humans. "Sir, these readings are remarkable. Their suspended animation system is unlike anything I've seen. It's not just keeping them alive, it's keeping them in perfect condition. No cellular degradation, no organ failure, no signs of the usual problems associated with long-term stasis. It's as if they went to sleep yesterday." "Any idea what kind of technology could achieve that level of preservation?" Dr. Vextar asked. "None. Our best stasis systems can maybe keep someone alive for 50 years, and that's with significant medical support and regular maintenance. This system has been running automatically for 8 centuries with no outside intervention." The implications were staggering. If humans had possessed technology this advanced 800 years ago, what else had they been capable of? Why had they disappeared so suddenly? And why had one of their ships been hidden out here in the middle of nowhere, carrying 1,000 sleeping warriors? As the Wisdom Seeker began its journey back to Kepler Prime, Dr. Vextar ordered round-the-clock monitoring of the human ship. Every system, every power fluctuation, every change in the status of the sleeping humans was recorded and analyzed. The science team worked in shifts, afraid to miss any detail that might provide clues about human technology or culture. The ship's external hull continued to fascinate them. The battle damage was clearly from multiple engagements over an extended period. Some scars were old and partially repaired. Others were fresh, as if the ship had been fighting right up until the moment it went into hiding. What kind of war could have lasted long enough to accumulate this much battle damage? Dr. Zinara's continued analysis of the human life signs revealed more puzzles. The sleeping humans showed signs of extensive physical conditioning and what appeared to be surgical modifications. Bone density was far above normal for a species of their size. Muscle mass was exceptional. Several individuals showed evidence of cybernetic implants that interfaced directly with their nervous systems. These aren't ordinary civilians, Dr. Zinara reported to Dr. Vextar during one of their daily briefings. These are soldiers, heavily modified, extensively trained soldiers. Every one of them shows signs of combat experience. Some have old injuries that healed with remarkable efficiency. Any idea what they were fighting? Dr. Vextar asked. That's the 3 months had passed since the human ship arrived at Kepler Prime. The research station buzzed with activity as scientists from across the galaxy studied every detail of the ancient vessel. Teams worked around the clock, analyzing hull composition, decoding data fragments, and trying to understand technology that shouldn't exist. Dr. Vextar stood in the main observation deck, looking down at the human ship through reinforced transparent aluminum. The vessel sat in the center of the research dock like a sleeping giant, surrounded by scanning equipment and robotic analyzers. Despite all their efforts, many of its secrets remained locked away. "Sir, the Council is pressuring us again," said Colwyn, approaching with a data pad full of messages. "They want to know when we'll begin awakening procedures." Dr. Vextar sighed. The political pressure had been building for weeks. Representatives from major galactic governments wanted access to human technology. Military leaders were interested in their weapons systems. Historians demanded answers about humanity's disappearance. Everyone wanted the humans awake and talking. But Dr. Vextar was cautious. 3 months of study had revealed that the humans aboard this ship were not ordinary people. Every piece of evidence pointed to them being military personnel of the highest caliber. Their equipment was advanced beyond current galactic standards. Their ship carried weapons that could devastate entire fleets. These were not the peaceful explorers and traders that historical records described. "What does Dr. Zinara recommend?" he asked. "She believes we can safely wake one individual for initial contact," Colwyn replied. "The stasis systems are well understood now, and we have medical facilities ready for any complications. She suggests starting with someone who appears to be a command officer." Dr. Vextar nodded slowly. They couldn't study the humans forever without actually speaking to one, and the pressure from the Council was becoming impossible to ignore. "Very well. Prepare awakening procedures for tomorrow. Select someone who appears to be in a leadership position but not the highest-ranking individual on the ship. We'll start small." The next morning, the research dock was crowded with scientists, security personnel, and observers from various galactic governments. The awakening of the first human in 8 centuries was being broadcast live across the consortium's communication networks. History was being made, and everyone wanted to witness it. Dr. Zinara had selected a human male who appeared to be a mid-level officer based on his uniform and position within the ship's command structure. His stasis pod was carefully moved to a secure medical facility within the research dock. Life support systems were connected, monitoring equipment was attached, and security teams took their positions. "Beginning awakening sequence," Dr. Zinara announced. "All systems are stable. Vital signs are responding normally to the stimulation protocols." The human's body temperature began to rise slowly. His heart rate increased from the barely detectable pulse of deep stasis to something approaching normal. Brain activity spiked as his nervous system came back online after centuries of sleep. It took nearly an hour for the process to complete, but finally his eyes opened. The human's first response was instant and violent. Even before full consciousness returned, his body was moving. Muscle memory and training took over as he rolled off the medical table and landed in a combat crouch, eyes scanning for threats and escape routes. His hands moved to where weapons should have been, finding nothing but the simple medical gown they had dressed him in. "Easy, easy," Dr. Zinara said in the calm voice she used with frightened animals. "You're safe. No one here wants to hurt you." The human's eyes fixed on her, then moved systematically around the room, cataloging every person, every piece of equipment, every possible threat. His breathing was controlled, his posture balanced and ready for action. This was not someone waking up confused and disoriented. This was a predator assessing a new environment. Where am I? The human asked in his own language. The translation computers had been programmed with human linguistic patterns from historical records, so his words appeared as text on screens throughout the facility. You're on Kepler Prime Research Station, Dr. Vextar replied, stepping forward, carefully. My name is Dr. Vextar. I'm a scientist with the Kepler Consortium. You've been in suspended animation for 847 years. The human processed this information without visible emotion. His eyes continued to scan the room, noting exit points, the positions of security personnel, the locations of anything that could be used as a weapon. When he spoke again, his voice was steady and professional. I am Colonel Dae-hyun of the Terran Defense Corps, 7th Shock Battalion. What is the current tactical situation? Dr. Vextar felt a chill run through him. Not where are my people or what happened to Earth, but what is the tactical situation? This human's first priority was understanding the military context of his situation. That was not the response of a peaceful explorer or trader. There is no tactical situation, Colonel, Dr. Vextar replied carefully. You're in no danger. We found your ship drifting in deep space and brought it here to study. We're scientists, not soldiers. Colonel Dae-hyun's expression didn't change, but his posture shifted slightly. To most observers, he appeared to relax. But Dr. Vextar, who had studied predator species across the galaxy, recognized the change for what it was. The human wasn't relaxing. He was shifting from immediate combat readiness to strategic planning mode. How many of my people have you awakened? Dae-hyun asked. You're the first, Dr. Zinara replied. We wanted to establish communication before proceeding further. What happened to the war? The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Dr. Vextar exchanged glances with his colleagues. This was the first confirmation that the humans had indeed been involved in some kind of conflict when their ship went into hiding. What war? Dr. Vextar asked carefully. Dae-hyun studied him for a long moment, then seemed to make a decision. The Unification War. The final campaign against the Terran Republic. We were en route to the Sigma Draconis system for the assault. On their last stronghold when we went into emergency stasis. How long did you say we've been out? 847 years, Dr. Vextar repeated. For the first time, emotion flickered across Dae-hyun's face. Surprise, then calculation, then something that might have been sadness. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by professional composure. Then it's over, he said quietly. One way or another, it's over. Dr. Zinara leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming caution. This unification war, was it between humans and alien species? Dae-hyun looked at her with something that might have been amusement. Aliens? No, Doctor. It was a human war. We were fighting other humans. The Terran Republic refused to accept unification under the Colonial Alliance. They declared independence and tried to establish their own interstellar government. The war lasted 153 years. The research team exchanged shocked glances. A war lasting over a century and a half, between members of the same species. It was almost incomprehensible to civilizations that had achieved interstellar travel through cooperation and peaceful expansion. 153 years, Dr. Vextar repeated, unable to hide his disbelief. The Republic was well prepared and highly motivated, Dae-hyun replied matter-of-factly. They had 47 systems under their control and a population of nearly 50 billion. They were excellent soldiers and brilliant tacticians. It took us considerable time and effort to defeat them. What kind of weapons were used in this war? Asked Dr. Zinara, though she wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer. Dae-hyun began listing technologies that made the research team's blood run cold. Planetary bombardment systems that could crack a world's crust. Biological weapons designed to target specific genetic markers. Antimatter warheads capable of sterilizing entire moons. Nanoscale weapons that could disassemble enemy equipment at the molecular level. The Republic developed a particularly nasty bioweapon in the final decade. Dae-hyun continued conversationally. It was designed to target anyone with Colonial Alliance genetic modifications. We lost about 30 million people before our medical corps developed countermeasures. In response, we deployed atmospheric processors that converted their agricultural worlds into toxic wasteland. Standard siege tactics. Dr. Vextar felt sick. This human was describing the systematic extermination of billions of people as if he were discussing the weather. The casual way he spoke of weapons that could destroy worlds, of acceptable casualty rates in the millions, of warfare that lasted longer than most civilizations had existed, was terrifying. How many people died in this war? Dr. Zinara asked quietly. Total casualties were approximately 150 billion across both sides, Daehyun replied. The final population count after the war was around 47 million humans remaining in known space. Acceptable losses, considering the strategic importance of unification. The room fell silent. 150 billion dead. An entire species had fought itself nearly to extinction, and this human was calling it acceptable losses. Doctor, Vextar began to understand why humanity had vanished from galactic records. There hadn't been enough of them left to maintain their interstellar presence. Colonel, Doctor. Word of the human awakening spread through the galactic community faster than light itself. Within days, representatives from every major civilization had arrived at Kepler Prime. The Consortium Council found itself under enormous pressure to awaken more humans for comprehensive study. Trade unions wanted access to human technology. Military leaders demanded tactical intelligence. Politicians saw opportunities for new alliances or threats to be contained. Dr. Vextar stood in the council chambers, facing a room full of beings who had no idea what they were asking for. He had spent 2 weeks interviewing Colonel Dae-hyun, and each conversation had revealed new horrors about human warfare capabilities. These people wanted to wake up 999 more just like him. The scientific value of studying an entire human military unit is immeasurable, argued Counselor Zektra from the hegemony worlds. We have a chance to understand, a species that vanished from history. We cannot waste this opportunity by being overly cautious. Dr. Vexitar, said High Administrator Voran, you have had extensive contact with the awakened human. Do you believe the others pose any danger to station security? Dr. Vexitar chose his words carefully. Colonel Dae-hyun has been cooperative and has shown no hostile intentions. However, I must emphasize that these are not civilian humans. They are professional soldiers from a war that lasted over 150 years, a war that killed 150 billion people. All the more reason to study them thoroughly, interrupted Dr. Felcox from the Academic Coalition. Think of what we could learn about conflict resolution, military organization, advanced weapons technology. The potential benefits are enormous. The debate continued for hours, but Dr. Vextar could see the outcome was predetermined. The political and scientific pressure was too great. The council would order the awakening of the remaining humans whether he agreed or not. His only choice was to try to ensure proper security measures were in place. If the council is determined to proceed, he said finally, I request that the humans be awakened in small groups with adequate security personnel present. I also recommend that they be housed in a secure facility designed for potentially dangerous subjects. Dr. Vextar, said Counselor Zektra with barely concealed irritation, these humans have been cooperative so far. There's no need for prison-like conditions. We'll provide them with comfortable quarters appropriate for honored guests. 3 days later, the awakening process began. Dr. Zinara and her medical team worked systematically through the human ship, bringing small groups out of stasis every few hours. The humans were transported to a hastily converted residential section of Kepler Prime that had been designated as their temporary quarters. Dr. Vextar watched the process with growing unease. Each human who awakened responded the same way Colonel Dae-hyun had: instant alertness, immediate threat assessment, systematic evaluation of their environment. These were not people adjusting to a strange new world. These were soldiers conducting reconnaissance. By the third day, 50 humans had been awakened. By the end of the first week, 200 were active. Dr. Vextar noticed changes in their behavior that worried him. The humans were establishing what appeared to be a military hierarchy within their quarters. They had organized themselves into work groups, patrol schedules, and communication networks using improvised signals. Colonel Dae-hyun, Dr. Vextar said during one of their regular interviews, "Your people seem to be organizing themselves along military lines." "Standard procedure for displaced units, Doctor," Dae-hyun replied. "When soldiers find themselves in unfamiliar territory, they establish defensive positions and maintain unit cohesion, basic survival tactics. But you're not in danger here. You're guests of the consortium." Dae-hyun gave him a look that was both patient and pitying. "Doctor, with all due respect, we are 1,000 humans surrounded by millions of aliens on a space station in unknown territory. Our ship has been impounded, our weapons confiscated, and we have no communication with human command authority. From a tactical standpoint, we are prisoners whether you call us guests or not." Dr. Vexitar realized that the humans were not seeing Kepler Prime the way the consortium intended. They were not impressed by the advanced technology or honored by the attention from galactic scientists. They were professional soldiers conducting a threat assessment, and they clearly didn't like what they were finding. By the end of the second week, 500 humans were awake and active. Dr. Zin Ara's reports grew increasingly concerning. The humans had somehow converted their quarters into what could only be described as a military compound. They had established guard rotations, created makeshift workshops where they were building equipment from scavenged materials, and organized intelligence gathering operations. "Intelligence gathering?" Dr. Vextar asked during their daily briefing. "What kind of intelligence?" "They're systematically questioning every alien who comes into contact with them," Dr. Zinara replied. "Station personnel, researchers, security, guards, maintenance workers. They're collecting information about our technology, our military capabilities, our political structure, and our weaknesses." Dr. Vextar felt a cold dread settling in his stomach. What kind of weaknesses? Major Subin, who appears to be their intelligence specialist, has been particularly interested in our life support systems, power generation, communication networks, and transportation infrastructure. She's also been asking detailed questions about our physiology and psychology. The implications were terrifying. The humans weren't just adapting to their situation. They were preparing for something. Dr. Vextar decided it was time to confront Colonel Dae-hyun directly. "Colonel, I need to ask you something directly," Dr. Vextar said during their next meeting. "Are your people planning some kind of action against this station?" Dae-hyun studied him for a moment before responding. "Doctor, we are soldiers who have been awakened in hostile territory with no knowledge of the current political or military situation. We are following standard procedures for such circumstances, which are: gather intelligence, assess threats, establish defensive positions, and prepare for extraction or combat as the situation requires." Dr. Vextar felt his worst fears being confirmed. "Colonel, you are not in hostile territory. This is a research station dedicated to peaceful scientific study." "Doctor," Dae-hyun replied patiently, "you have taken our ship, confiscated our equipment, and placed us under guard while you study us like laboratory specimens. You may call this peaceful scientific research, but from our perspective, we have been captured and imprisoned. We are responding accordingly." The conversation was interrupted by an emergency alert on Dr. Vexitar's communication device. Security Chief Mordak was requesting his immediate presence in the security center. Dr. Vexitar excused himself and hurried to find out what had gone wrong now. "Doctor," Chief Mordak said as soon as he arrived, "we have a problem. A big problem. The security center's main screen showed surveillance footage from the human quarters. What Dr. Vexitar saw made his blood run cold. The humans had somehow gained access to areas of the station they were not supposed to be able to reach. They were moving through maintenance shafts, service tunnels, and utility corridors with the efficiency of people who had mapped every route in detail." "How long has this been going on?" Dr. Vextar asked. "We're not sure," Chief Mordak replied. "They've been very careful to avoid our main surveillance systems. We only discovered it because one of our maintenance workers reported seeing humans in areas where they shouldn't be. What are they doing in those areas?" "That's what worries me. They appear to be studying our infrastructure, power conduits, communication relays, life support systems, transportation networks. It's like they're conducting a detailed reconnaissance of the entire station. Dr. Vextar watched the footage with growing horror. The humans moved through the station's hidden spaces like ghosts, photographing everything, taking detailed measurements, and leaving no trace of their presence. This wasn't casual exploration. This was professional military intelligence gathering. There's more, Chief Mordak continued. We've detected unauthorized access to our computer networks. Someone has been probing our security systems, downloading technical manuals and copying facility blueprints. The intrusions are extremely sophisticated, using techniques we've never seen before. Can you trace them back to the source? That's the problem. The intrusions are coming from inside the station, but we can't identify the specific terminals being used. Whoever is doing this is very good at covering their tracks. Dr. Vextar didn't need to guess who was responsible. The humans had been systematically studying every aspect of Kepler Prime's operations for weeks. They now knew more about the station's capabilities and vulnerabilities than most of the people who worked there. Sir, one of the technicians called out, we're getting reports of strange malfunctions throughout the station. Minor systems failures, communication glitches, power fluctuations. Nothing serious, but the pattern is unusual. Dr. Vextar felt a chill run through him. What kind of pattern? The failures are occurring in systems that would be critical during an emergency evacuation or security lockdown. Backup power systems, emergency communications, blast door controls, that kind of thing. The Pictu. Dr. Vextar barely slept anymore. For 3 weeks he had watched the humans adapt to their situation with an efficiency that chilled him to his core. All 1,000 were now awake and active, and what he saw happening in their quarters bore no resemblance to a group of refugees adjusting to a new world. The humans had transformed their living area into a military base. Every action they took served a tactical purpose. Their meals were organized like mission briefings. Their exercise routines doubled as combat training. Their casual conversations were actually coded intelligence exchanges that the translation computers couldn't fully decode. Security Chief Mordak had tripled the guard presence around the human quarters, but Dr. Vextar knew it wouldn't matter. The humans had already demonstrated their ability to move through the station undetected. They had mapped every corridor, studied every system, and identified every weakness Kepler Prime possessed. The breaking point came during what should have been a routine interview. Dr. Vextar was meeting with Colonel Daehyun in the secure conference room they had used for all their previous conversations. But this time, something was different. The colonel's demeanor had shifted from polite cooperation to cold professionalism. Doctor, Daehyun said without preamble, we need to discuss the terms of our departure. Dr. Vextar felt his heart skip. Departure? Colonel, you're free to leave whenever you wish, but your ship requires extensive repairs before it can safely travel interstellar distances. Our ship is fully functional, Doctor. Your repairs were unnecessary. We've been monitoring your work teams, and they've been installing tracking devices and remote shutdown systems. That suggests you never intended to let us leave freely. The accusation hung in the air like a weapon. Dr. Vextar wanted to deny it, but he knew the colonel was right. The Consortium Council had indeed ordered the installation of monitoring equipment on the human ship. The official reason was to study their technology, but everyone involved knew the real purpose was to maintain control over the humans. Colonel, the Consortium has invested enormous resources in studying your people and your technology. There are legitimate scientific and security concerns that need to be addressed before— Doctor, Daehyun interrupted, his voice dropping to a tone that made Dr. Vextar's skin crawl. Are we prisoners or are we guests? It was the same question. He had asked weeks ago, but now it carried a weight of menace that hadn't been there before. Dr. Vextar realized that this was not a conversation. It was an ultimatum. You are guests, he replied carefully. But there are protocols that must be followed for the safety of everyone involved. I see. Daehyun stood up slowly, his movements controlled and deliberate. Then you won't mind if we conduct our own safety protocols. Before Dr. Vextar could ask what he meant, alarms began sounding throughout Kepler Prime. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in red, and automated voices announced a station-wide security alert. Through the conference room's windows, Dr. Vextar could see chaos erupting in the normally orderly research facility. "What's happening?" Dr. Vextar demanded. "Standard extraction procedures," Dae-hyun replied calmly. "When negotiations fail, soldiers fall back on direct action." Dr. Vextar's communication device erupted with frantic calls from throughout the station. The humans were everywhere at once, moving with coordinated precision that spoke of careful planning and professional execution. This wasn't a panic response or desperate escape attempt. This was a military operation. Squad leader Nari and her communications team had taken control of the station's primary communication array within the first 60 seconds of the operation. All external communications were now under human control, preventing Kepler Prime from calling for help or warning other ships in the system. Tech specialist Dong-soo had simultaneously struck at the station's computer networks, unleashing a cascade of system failures that he had been preparing for weeks. Power grids fluctuated wildly. Life support systems switched to emergency mode, and security doors began malfunctioning throughout the facility. It was technological warfare on a scale that the station's defenses had never been designed to handle. Combat. Medic Ye-jin led a team that had infiltrated the security center itself. But instead of using violence, she had employed psychological tactics that were far more effective. Within minutes, she had convinced half the security personnel that the station was under attack by hostile forces, and that the humans were allies trying to help with the evacuation. The remaining guards found themselves isolated and overwhelmed by conflicting information. "How?" Dr. Vextar asked, staring at the chaos unfolding around them. "How did you coordinate all of this?" "Doctor, you've been studying us for weeks, but you never understood what you were looking at," Dae-hyun replied. "We are not refugees or specimens. We are soldiers from a war that lasted longer than your civilization has had space travel. We have been planning this operation since the day we were awakened." Through the chaos, Dr. Vextar could see the true genius of the human plan. They weren't just escaping, they were systematically dismantling Kepler Prime's ability to function as a research facility. The sabotage was precise and devastating, targeting systems that would take months to repair properly. Major Subin's intelligence team had identified every critical system on the station and marked them for specific types of damage. Power generators were being overloaded in ways that would cause cascading failures throughout the electrical grid. Water recycling systems were being contaminated with compounds that would render them unusable for weeks. Computer networks were being infected with logic bombs that would trigger random failures for months to come. "You're not just leaving," Dr. Vextar realized with horror. "You're crippling the entire station. We're ensuring that Kepler Prime cannot continue its current research activities," Dae-hyun corrected. "Your people have demonstrated that they cannot be trusted to honor the rights of guests. We are making sure you cannot make the same mistake with other species." The efficiency of the human assault was terrifying. Security teams that tried to respond to the crisis found their equipment malfunctioning, their communications jammed, and their orders contradicted by false information coming through compromised channels. The humans had studied every aspect of the station's operations and turned its own systems against it. Captain Jin Woo had led a team that captured 3 alien shuttlecraft in the docking bays, but not through force. Instead, they had convinced the pilots that they were helping with an emergency evacuation. By the time the aliens realized what was happening, human technical specialists had already modified the ship's navigation systems and security protocols. Dr. Vextar watched through the observation windows as the human ship began powering up its engines. The tracking devices and remote shutdown systems that had been installed were failing one by one, their circuits fried by electromagnetic pulses that the humans had somehow generated from within the ship itself. "Colonel, please," Dr. Vextar said desperately. "We can work together. The consortium didn't mean to treat you as prisoners. There were misunderstandings, but they can be corrected." Dae-hyun turned to face him directly, and Dr. Vextar saw something in the human's eyes that made him step backward involuntarily. It was the look of a predator that had run out of patience with its prey. "Doctor," Your people imprisoned 1,000 soldiers from a species that fought itself nearly to extinction. You studied us like laboratory animals and planned to keep us here indefinitely. Did you really think we would accept that quietly? We didn't know. You didn't want to know, Daehyun interrupted. You wanted to believe we were harmless relics from a peaceful past. You ignored every warning sign because it was easier than dealing with the reality of what we are. The station shuddered as explosions echoed through the corridors. But these weren't random acts of destruction. Each blast was precisely placed to disable specific systems while leaving life support and structural integrity intact. The humans were demonstrating their ability to destroy Kepler Prime completely while choosing not to do so. We could have killed everyone on this station within the first hour of our operation, Daehyun said, as if reading Dr. Vextar's thoughts. We chose not to because we are not monsters, but make no mistake, Doctor, we had that option, and everyone aboard this station is alive because we decided to show mercy. Through the observation window, Dr. Vextar could see human soldiers moving through the corridors with mechanical precision. They wore improvised armor created from station materials and carried weapons they had built from scavenged components. But what struck him most was their absolute discipline. Despite the chaos around them, not a single human showed signs of panic or confusion. They moved like parts of a single organism, each knowing their role in the larger operation. Captain Hyejin, the unit's chief medical officer, had established a triage center where she was treating injured station personnel with the same efficiency she showed in treating her own people. But Dr. Vexistar noticed that her medical procedures also served as intelligence gathering. Every alien she treated was questioned about their physiology, their medical knowledge, and their species' biological weaknesses. You're still gathering intelligence, Dr. Vextar observed. Of course, Daehyun replied. This operation is providing us with. Captain Taewan stood at the observation deck of the human ship, watching space bend and twist around them as they traveled faster than light toward the edge of known galactic civilization. 3 months had passed since their escape from Kepler Prime, and the journey through alien space had provided countless opportunities to study the civilizations they passed. The 1,000 soldiers of the 7th Shock Battalion had used their travel time efficiently. Every inhabited system they scouted provided new intelligence about alien capabilities, defensive positions, and technological levels. What they found was both encouraging and disturbing. Encouraging because galactic civilization was far less militarily advanced than they had expected. Disturbing because the aliens showed signs of peaceful cooperation on a scale that seemed almost impossible. Sir, reported Sergeant Boram from her position at the sensor station, we're approaching the coordinates Colonel Daehyun specified. Long-range scans are detecting multiple artificial structures in the target system. Colonel Daehyun moved to the tactical display, studying the readings with the professional interest of a soldier who had spent his entire career preparing for the unknown. The coordinates had been programmed into their ship's navigation computer before they entered stasis 8 centuries ago, marking a fallback position where human forces were supposed to regroup after the final assault on the Terran Republic. What kind of structures, he asked. Large ones, sir. Very large. The energy signatures suggest massive industrial complexes, orbital shipyards, and what might be defensive installations. Whatever is out there, it's been building for a long time. As they dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, the truth became apparent. This wasn't a fallback position or emergency rendezvous point. This was a military stronghold on a scale that dwarfed anything the old colonial alliance had ever constructed. The system contained 17 planets, and every single one showed signs of massive industrial development. Orbital rings surrounded the inner worlds, their surfaces covered with manufacturing facilities and docking bays. Asteroid mining operations had stripped the system's belt down to its largest rocks, turning raw materials into the building blocks of an interstellar war machine, but it was the ships that truly revealed the scope of what they were seeing. Thousands of vessels moved through the system in organized formations, ranging from small patrol craft to massive battleships that could have served as mobile space stations. These were not the crude warships that had fought the Unification War. These were products of 8 centuries of focused military development. "Sir?" called tech specialist Dong-Su from the communications station. "We're being hailed. Multiple ships are moving to intercept us. They're using current human military protocols." Colonel Dae-hyun felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Relief. After 8 centuries in the void, after months surrounded by aliens who saw them as specimens or threats, they had finally come home to their own people. "Open communications," he ordered. The main screen filled with the image of a human naval officer wearing a uniform that was clearly descended from Colonial Alliance designs, but had evolved considerably over the centuries. Her rank insignia identified her as a fleet commodore, and her bearing suggested she was accustomed to command authority. "Unknown vessel," she said. "You are approaching restricted military space. Identify yourself immediately, or you will be fired upon. Commodore, this is Colonel Dae-hyun of the Terran Defense Corps, 7th Shock Battalion, returning from Operation Final Strike against the Terran Republic. We have been in extended deep space operations and are requesting permission to return to friendly space." The Commodore's expression changed from professional suspicion to shock. She looked at someone off-screen, had a brief whispered conversation, then turned back to the display. "Colonel, according to our records, the 7th Shock Battalion was listed as missing in action over 800 years ago. You're going to need to submit to identification protocols and debriefing procedures. A security escort is being dispatched to guide you to Processing Station Alpha." As their ship was surrounded by an escort of modern human warships, Colonel Dae-hyun studied the designs with professional interest. These were clearly products of centuries of warfare, streamlined and efficient in ways that the old Colonial Alliance had never achieved. Every line spoke of hard-won experience and brutal optimization. Major Subin joined him at the tactical display, her intelligence officer's instincts analyzing everything they could observe about their escort vessels. "Sir, these ships are carrying weapon systems I don't recognize. Power signatures are off the charts compared to anything we had during the war. And look at the hull configurations." She was right. The human ships showed signs of armor systems designed to withstand weapons that hadn't existed during their time. Reactive plating, energy dispersal grids, and what appeared to be some kind of adaptive camouflage system that made the ships difficult to target even when they were visible. Processing Station Alpha turned out to be a massive orbital facility that served as both a military checkpoint and a quarantine center. As the 7th Shock Battalion was transferred to secure holding areas for identification verification, Colonel Dae-hyun caught glimpses of the station's other functions. Medical facilities designed to treat injuries from weapons he didn't recognize. Research laboratories working on technologies that seemed decades ahead of what they had known. Training facilities where soldiers practiced combat techniques adapted for fighting multiple alien species simultaneously. The debriefing process took 3 days, during which Colonel Dae-hyun and his officers were questioned extensively by intelligence specialists, historical experts, and medical personnel. But what struck him most was how thoroughly prepared his interrogators were for every aspect of his story. They knew about the Unification War, about the Colonial Alliance's tactics, and about the specific mission parameters of Operation Final Strike. More importantly, they were not surprised to learn about his encounter with alien civilizations. If anything, they seemed to consider it a routine intelligence-gathering opportunity. "Colonel," said Admiral Min Seo during the final debriefing session, "your report confirms much of what we have learned through our own reconnaissance operations. The alien civilizations you encountered represent the majority population of this galactic region, and they pose significant strategic challenges to human expansion." Colonel Dae-hyun studied the Admiral with growing understanding. This was not the leader of a struggling remnant population trying to rebuild after a devastating war. This was a military commander planning for galactic conquest. "Admiral, what happened after the Unification War ended?" "The war ended with complete Colonial Alliance victory 18 months after your unit went missing," Admiral Min Seo replied matter-of-factly. "The Terran Republic's final strongholds were eliminated, and the surviving human population was unified under a single government. The Unity Directive was implemented immediately." The Unity Directive? Total mobilization of human resources, for survival and expansion. The war had demonstrated that humans could only survive by being stronger than any potential threat. Every aspect of human civilization was reorganized around military preparation and technological advancement. Admiral Minseo activated a holographic display that showed the development of human space over the past 8 centuries. It was a story of relentless expansion and militarization. The surviving human population had dedicated itself entirely to becoming the most dangerous species in the galaxy. We spent the first 2 centuries rebuilding and expanding our population through accelerated reproduction programs and genetic optimization, the Admiral continued. The next 3 centuries were devoted to technological advancement, with particular focus on weapons development and military engineering. The final 3 centuries have been spent in reconnaissance and preparation for our return to the galactic stage. Colonel Dae-hyun absorbed this information with a mixture of pride and horror. Humanity had not only survived the Unification War, it had used the experience to transform itself into something unprecedented. But the scope of the transformation was staggering. "How large is the current human population?" he asked. "Approximately 47 billion across 134 worlds," Admiral Minseo replied. "Every human citizen is trained for military service from childhood. Our industrial capacity is entirely focused on military production. We have been preparing for 8 centuries to reclaim our place in the galaxy." Captain Jin Woo, who had been silent throughout most of the debriefing, finally spoke up. "Admiral, the aliens we encountered showed no signs of hostility toward humans. Many of them seem to consider us extinct. Why are we treating them as threats?" Admiral Minseo's expression hardened. "Captain, the Unification War taught us that peaceful coexistence is a luxury we cannot afford. The aliens may not be currently hostile, but they possess the industrial capacity and population numbers to destroy us if they ever decide we are a threat. Our only guarantee of survival is to ensure that we remain the dominant military force in the galaxy." The logic was coldly perfect and utterly terrifying. Humanity had looked into the abyss of total war and concluded that the only way to avoid falling into it